welcome everybody to this second online teaching tutorial. And I'm joined today by my colleagues Steve Hull and Jax Morecambe. Steve's doing some of the technical bits behind the scenes. Steve, can we just have the next slide, please? So I can just tell people a little bit about how this tutorial is going to be broadcast. So we actually will be, this will actually be streaming to the following platforms. We've got Facebook, Tutor, YouTube and Twitter. And to find our Facebook, just search English Bridge Education and Development, or eBed Charity if you're looking for Twitter. The tutorial today will be recorded, and the recording will be available on YouTube, Twitter and Facebook. So what that means is that when we see on the screen your lovely smiling faces, and we see you perhaps interacting with the presentation team or asking questions, you will be recorded. So if you don't want to be recorded live, then the way to achieve that is to leave this Zoom tutorial and to go and watch this exactly the same thing via Facebook, Twitter or YouTube. So so that's what's happening with our recording. So as long as you're all happy, then stay here in the Zoom. But if you don't want to be recorded, then you may leave and watch us on Twitter. So we can now tell you that we're going live now on Facebook, YouTube and Twitter. If I can just ask you, Steve, to move on to the next slide, please. So during the presentations, only the host microphones will be unmuted. So that's going to be either myself, Steve or Jax. And you should find in the corner of your screen, if you find the chat function, you can ask questions during the presentation. And after the meeting, we will have a question and answer session. And we'll also ask you to join our teachers forum to let us have feedback and any further questions. Now, what we're going to talk about today is we're going to have Jax talking to us, giving a presentation about BBO multiple tables. So if you missed the presentation last week, which was about an introduction to BBO, we only covered using BBO with just 4 students, or possibly a couple of extra people watching. But obviously as teachers, many of us have multiple tables, so that's going to be the main theme of Jax's talk today. Now, as part of that, she will mention the fact that in Zoom you can have something called a Zoom breakout. So before we join Jax, I'm just going to go over to Steve now, who's going to give a short demonstration of what is meant by a Zoom breakout room. So can I get you to take over, Steve, please?
You can do. I'm just going to stop sharing this one so I can set up the next one. And let me now share that one instead. Well, what you can see here is this is my setup screen for Zoom. So you find this by going onto the online through your browser, rather than actually the Zoom desktop app, because this actually has more settings that you can set up than the actual meeting application does. So on the left here you can see settings, and then you run down through this until you find the right one for breakout rooms, which actually is quite near the bottom. It's actually under In Meeting Advanced. And you can see here that you have the option here for breakout room. And if you click on this, it will allow host to split meeting participants into separate smaller rooms. If you wanted to do that at the stage that you actually scheduled the meeting, you just need to click that button there. So that effectively is how you set up, you enable breakout rooms for the meeting in the settings screen on Zoom. Okay, I think it's over to you now, Jax.
Right, so yeah, so if I can just introduce Jax Morecambe, who you all met last week as well, but Jax is now going to talk about using BBO for multiple tables.
I am. Good morning. Welcome, everyone. It's lovely to see you, and it's lovely to feel part of a crowd. How exciting. Yes, today's tutorial is really an add-on to last week's. First of all, I want to say, if you are new to BBO, if you are teaching for the first time, this is not the place to start. It is an add-on and a moving on from the subject matter that we've already covered. And if you haven't looked at last week's tutorial, or if you're new to BBO, this will be a step too far. So if that's the case, by all means stay, but if it gets too much, then refer to the video from last week, look at this week's video after that, and then hopefully it'll make a little more sense. So first of all, I think we'll just run through the learning outcomes for today's session, which are breakout rooms. Now, Steve has just introduced breakout rooms and what they can do. From a teaching point of view, when you're looking at multiple tables, they're very helpful because they enable you to divide your group. When you're delivering a lesson, they can be helpful for doing quizzes or whatever you'd like to do when you want people to talk in separate sections and then be brought back together. But when you are on Bridge-Based Online or Bridge Club Live, whatever you're using, it's very important that table can just speak together. So breakout rooms become really important the larger our class sizes are. So we're going to understand how to set up a Teams table today in Bridge-Based Online. That's a very easy way to deal with two tables, and I will take you through those steps. Then we're going to be looking at organising larger groups and how you can overcome those issues. And then I'm going to be talking about collaboration. There are quite a lot of different methods that are available to you. And it's a fluid situation at the moment with a lot of online play. So I just want to keep you abreast with what is going on, and we'll talk about how we can collaborate and share our ideas. So we're just going to log on to Bridge-Based Online. Hopefully this will be quite seamless. As I've told you before, there are certain points and times in the day that Bridge-Based Online becomes much more busy. We should be okay this morning because it's quite early. So here we are, we're in our lobby. We're familiar with this, we were here last week. And this time I want to talk to you about two tables. We know how to deal with one table. We're very comfortable with setting up a teaching table. We're very comfortable with having kibitzers in our teaching table. Now what we want to do is be aware of how we cope when we have two other tables. So this is how to get into a Teams table when you have two tables with 8 students. You go into competitive. I'm just going to highlight spotlight my cursor so that you can see that a little better. And then we go into team matches. Hopefully you can all see that. And when we are in team matches, we want to go down to this button here, which says create a team match. So we want to click on create a team match. When we're in that table, it brings up this pop-up, which it gives us a lot of options. The first page, it gives us an identification, and we can simply put our team table in there. I'm going to say Jax's friendly tutorial on Tuesday, and a description of our match. That can be exactly the same. I'm going to have Jax versus Steve today. Steve doesn't know, but we're playing in a match against each other. So team 1 and team 2. Team 1 is my table. Team 2 is the other table. In my example, it's going to be Steve. Now, this is where you need to be very careful when you're setting up a team's match. It's so easy to move down to click that create team match button on the bottom. Please don't resist the urge. If you do that, it will actually create with some default settings, and you'll have to go back and try and create it again. So don't go down there. Go back up to the main menu and hit the options tab, and then it brings up a new page. Forms of scoring. If you're in a teaching table, it really doesn't matter. You have imps, border match, or total points. The important thing for you is the number of boards that you're playing. You can play up to 36, but the default is at 8. So I know that I've just delivered a lesson that I delivered last night, for instance. I've spoken to my students, I've given a lesson on transfers, and now I want them to play the boards specific to transfers. I know I have got 8 boards in my deal folder, and so I'm very happy that my number of boards for this playing practice is correct. So put the number of boards in there. Now deal source, this is the important thing. Last week we spoke about how to use folders. So we're all very clear how to populate our folders with our deal files that we want to teach, that we have downloaded from eBed. If you're not sure about that, please go back to the last tutorial, look at how to do that, because I'm now telling you how to use those folders and put them into your tables to play. So the default is random deals, but we want to use our saved deals. So we click on use saved deals here. And you'll notice it comes up with something called select folder. We click on select folder, and this will be familiar to you. These are all the folders that we created last week, and here they are. You'll notice when I populate my folders with data, I actually put the number that relates to the teaching notes and an explanation in my folder. So it's very easy for me when I teach to find the right deals for any particular subject. So we're going to be looking, I'm going to be teaching transfers. So I click on transfers. Now, this is very subtle and it's worth mentioning. You know that you've selected the right folder because it turns blue. It's a very subtle shift, but as long as your folder has turned blue, you have selected it. And then you have to click on this little gray select button at the top. And that has selected that deal file. Now, the only thing I can tell you, I actually don't know, and I can't see anywhere how you check before you set up that table that that deal file has been imported successfully. All I can say is every time I've done that process, it has in fact worked. So now we have imported the deal files that we want into our table. We move on to these sections. Now, they're going to be, I don't need to repeat them. These are what we looked at last week. We allow kibitzers, very important that we do, because I'm setting up a Teams table for my students. I'm not playing in this table. What I want to do is flip between one table to the other. I want to be able to talk to my students and I want to be able to look at everything they're doing. So you need to make sure you are allowing kibitzers, and you need to make sure you're allowing your kibitzers to chat to the players. This is a default setting, so you don't have to worry about it, but please don't disable that or you might struggle. Allowing undos. Now, undos, certainly with students or people that are finding their way on BBO, you must allow undos, really. It just allows them to take back the bid or the card play that they have just made, and we need to be generous with that. On that very note, I'm just going to add a tip to you. You know, last week we looked at the settings and how we can change our settings to enable chat speak was one of the things that I talked about. This week, on the note of allowing undos, I'm going to suggest when your students play, you look at playing, and there's something here called confirm bids. Can you see that? And confirm cards. Now I have mine enabled, but in default, they are disabled. If you tell your students to click on these two buttons, that means that when they are playing and when they are bidding, instead of just one click, which, let's face it, we can all make a mistake, particularly if we're not using a mouse and we can click on something and we didn't mean it. This means that once they click on once, they need to confirm it with a second click before the card or the bid moves to their playing table. And that's quite helpful, particularly when people are starting, and it will save you or other people at the table being asked for an undo. So that's just a tip in setup. Barometer scoring down the bottom, that simply means that everyone is playing the same board at the same time. And this is an option that's automatically selected, and I would say keep it. Once again, when you come to the bottom of this screen, don't click create team match. You've got one more tab to finish with, and that is resume reserve seats. Now here is where you populate your tables with your students' names, and you'll have been prepared and you have all of your students' IDs and you're ready to put them into tables. One thing to be aware of is when you are setting up teams, you are setting up a table for a team. I'm going to click on North and I'm going to put Jacks A and Jacks B, because I'm not setting up the actual playing table. I am setting up the home table for my team match. Now we're going to come to why that's important, particularly important, in a minute. So I'm playing Steve, and I'm now setting up Steve's team, which is Steve A versus Steve is playing with Steve B and Steve C. You will know all of your students' logins, and this is where you will put those. Okay, so we've set up our table. So one thing that Steve just talked about was the idea of using breakout rooms when you have more than one table. It's very handy. It's not the only way that you can continue audio communication, but it's a handy way of doing it. Same with Steve B. I am about to set up two tables for my teaching. What I want to do is to be able to talk individually to each of those tables. So when I create this team match, which I'm about to do in a minute, what's going to happen is the first table would be Jacks A and Jacks B versus Steve C and Steve D, because these are the home tables of the team, not the people you're actually playing. That is quite important, because if I want to set up, and I do, a breakout room, so that when my BBO table is created, I can also go into my Zoom meeting and I can create two rooms within that for me to talk to my tables. I need to make sure the correct people are allocated to the Zoom breakout room that is their table, as you know, so that they're both exactly the same. So in my Zoom breakout room, my table will actually be Jax A, Jax B, Steve C, and Steve D. And that's just something when you set up, you need to make sure you're setting up the actual table as it's playing, not the home tables as we're creating now. So we create a team match by clicking this button down here. I did mention last week that you need 100 logins to create a team match. And that's a reason, if you're a teacher, get your 100 logins in there quickly, because if you don't have 100 logins, and I'll just remind you, it's up here, 100 login under logins. If you don't have that, you will not be able to create this. VBO won't let you do it. Even with 100 logins, you can only create one team match for some reason. I think it needs to go much higher before you have the license to create more. So be aware that when you click this create team match, you basically get one chance at it. And if you somehow miss it and need to go back, you've made a mistake and need to go back, maybe you haven't put the right number of boards in at the start or done something. If you've only got 100 logins, you won't be able to create another one. So just ensure that everything is right before you go. You can flip back, check your identification, check your number of boards you're playing. Once you're starting, you can't change this. And then you create your team match. You press this. What happens when you create a team match is all of your students need to be online at the same time for the tables to be created. So you'll need to get your students onto VBO, today we're demonstrating Zoom breakout rooms, but whatever platform you're using, and then you create your team match and they will get taken to the table. So if people aren't online, you'll just get an error message and you'll just have to make sure they're in. So that, in a nutshell, is how to create your table. What we're going to do now is look at somebody who's already creating a table. We'll look at a running team. And let's have a look at this one, because I'll show you when you create a table, what you'll be able to do is go into it as a teacher. You're not playing, your students are playing. And we'll look at running tournaments. So there's a table that's been created. If I was a teacher here, I can simply click on table 1 in grey, and it will take me to the table. Now I'm in a fantastic position, because if these are my students, I can see every hand, I can see every bid, I can keep an eye on the play, I can communicate either via a breakout room. If I put this table, these 4 people into one breakout room, I can talk to them like I'm talking to you. But I can also chat to them on the chat bar. We discussed this last week. We must make sure we're chatting to the right people, but I can chat to the table, and my lines of communication are very open. Let me show you one thing as well when you are observing as a teacher or anything in a team's environment. You see this box here that has got the IMP scores in. If I click on that, it will bring up the results of this table. You can see, let me see, here they are playing board 13. If I click on this, you can see the previous boards that they have played all the way down to board 12. They're the results. If I actually click again on the board, I get up this tab, and this tells me the bidding that went on. And if I come down here and click next card, it shows me exactly every card that was played by my students at this table. Even if I wasn't here to observe it and I went to the other table, I can come back and I can see exactly what went on. The other thing to mention, we talked last week about history and about saving deals in a teaching table. It's important with random deals and when you're in a teaching room to save those deals, because they won't be. In a Teams environment, that's different. These deals are saved. You don't need to go in and do them, and you can go into history and then see what your students have done at the end of the session and give them feedback if you so wish. Now, this is just one of my tables with my students on. Now, I want to go back to the other table and I want to see what the other students are doing. So I simply go back, I look at my running tournament, I've been in table 1, I'm just going to nip into the second table, and there I am. I can see what they're up to, I can see how they bid, I can give them instruction. And because I've set up my Zoom breakout room and moved them into it, I can now talk to them. Now, Zoom breakout rooms, they have got very good instruction. I'm not going to go into how to use them. The only thing to mention is that just as I am slipping in and out of those 2 tables on BBO, you need to do the same thing with your Zoom window and your breakout rooms. And it takes a little while. I had 4 tables I was teaching last night, and it does take a little while to connect to each room. And it's a knack, and it's fun, and it's not for the faint-hearted, but you will get used to it. And the more you do it, it's very useful to be able to dip in a room and just speak as if you're teaching, rather than having to chat or other methods of communication that are available to you. So that's the beauty of Teams, and the easy way, I personally, from my own experience, the easy way to teach with when you just have 2 tables. If you have 10 students, of course, they can kibitz with you, that you can have one sitting with one team and another sitting with another table, and you can incorporate those. The big problem comes when we have 3 tables. Because we're quite happy we can deal with 2 very easily. But what do we do suddenly when we have 3? We have an issue, because as we looked at last week, when we are in a teaching table, and I'll remind you how to get to that, we can set up a teaching table, but we are hosts. When I set this table up, I am a host. And if I leave this teaching table, the table collapses, it folds. I can't then dip in and out of any other table, because when I leave, the table disappears. So you're limited with 1 table. And you're also limited to where you can have the flexibility to upload your own deal files, which is what we want to do. So the Teams table is good because it allows us flexibility of uploading our own deals. And the teaching table is also good because it allows us the same flexibility. So we really want to keep the flexibility within these tables, but we want to have more. And if we have 3 tables, we're stuck. There is a way around it, and the way around it is within your login. You'll see my login here is Jax M, but there is absolutely no limit to the number of logins you can create. The eagle-eyed amongst you will have seen that last week I was teaching, and I was teaching under a different login. I was teaching under Jax Teach, and let me show you my Jax Teach screen. Here you go. I am now, if you look at my screen, hopefully I've shared that properly with you. My login, my username should have changed. I am now Jax Teach. Now what I've actually done is I am still logged in as Jax M on a different browser, and my teaching table that I've set up is still running on a different browser. It's Google Chrome in that instance. But what I've done is I've opened up a new browser, which is Microsoft Edge in this instance, on my same computer, and I have logged in under a different login, in this instance, Jax Teach. So I now have 2 BBO logins running simultaneously on my one device, on my laptop. I've still got my Teams table running under JAX-M. I am now free to create another table under this login, JAX Teach. So if I've got 3 tables, I can leave my 2 tables, they're set up, they're running, they're very happy. If I want to go back to them at any time, my browsers are open in my taskbar at the bottom of my PC. I can click on my Google browser and that will take me into my Teams match. And I click on my Microsoft Edge browser and that will take me in here. I just have to swap between one and the other. But so now I'm free with this new login, JAX Teach, to set up my 3rd table because I have the other 2 set up. I'm going to now set up a teaching table because I've got another group with a new login. And I'm going to start that table. And I'm going to populate that with myself. So, as I've said to you before, with a teaching table, the benefit of it is that you can populate it with yourself if you so wish. And for demonstration purposes, that's exactly what I'm going to do. I'm going to put myself in there. I demonstrated last week how to do this, so I'm not going to run over it again, but I am just showing you that you can have more than one teaching table going at the same time by using a different browser. So I have set up a table, it's reserved. If I click on the blue hamburger that I mentioned last week, or the box up here, this is how I import deals into a teaching table. Now, I didn't demonstrate this last week. I've had some emails about it. So if you want to know, please watch carefully. If I click on the blue box, I go down to deal source. I click on that. And then I'm using saved deals. I use saved deals. I click on that. And our familiar folders come up. I click on my folder that I want. We're playing transfers. My Teams table that is running on my other browser is playing transfers and playing these hands. So I'm uploading exactly the same hands into a teaching table. I click on that. And again, it's subtle. It just turns blue and then you press select. And all you do is close it down. It's actually worked. But there's no indication that it has, but you just have to trust the system that it has. And now to get the actual deal onto the table, I click on our little blue hamburger again, and I press redeal. And out comes my deal. That's how you do it. So now I'm in a position where my Teams table is playing. I've got 2 tables. They are playing exactly the same hands at the same time as this teaching table that I have just set up. And I have 3 tables all playing together, all at the same time, all playing the same hands. And I slip between them by switching browsers, going down to my taskbar. I'm in Microsoft Edge, having set up this Teams table. I need to then swap to my other browser to go back to my Google browser and back to my Teams, and then go between the tables as we just described. It is not for the faint-hearted, and I said to you at the beginning, you really need to be very familiar with teaching one table in the teaching room and having kibitzers in before you move to this stage. It really is. It takes practice. And also preparing Zoom breakout rooms and getting all your students in the right place takes practice. My advice would be to begin with teaching your students and play with breakout rooms if that's the way you want to go. I'm not suggesting that that is, but if you want to use them, practice with them just in a teaching environment to start with. maybe divide them up and give them a quiz to discuss in their individual breakout rooms, and then bring them back together so they get used to using it. Just like Bridgebase Online, we demonstrated last week that when you get sent an invite, when you're playing, I demonstrated that with Lorna, I think, you click on the invite and you get taken to the table. It's the same with Zoom breakout rooms. When you're in a main room and you as a teacher move your students into a breakout room, they need to accept it. So they need to get used to this process before you move on here. So start small, get them all moving into different breakout rooms if you want to use that. Then get them playing maybe in a Teams match, move up from one teaching table to two. Use your Teams match, flip between those two tables, get used to going back and forth. Then when you're comfortable in that, take on extra tables, open up a browser, add your two tables or one table, open up a new browser with a new ID that you've just created, so you have two separate IDs, and then move on from there. It's in practice, it's not as bad as it sounds. My experience is that my students, we come in with an expectation of we're learning something new and we're going to have fun with it, and when it works, it's tremendously satisfying. It's wonderful. There is another option that is available to you. I'm discussing this because in front of me I just have my PC, but of course many of you at home might have a computer and two laptops. You might have more devices, in other words, than just one available to you. It might be easier for you under that scenario to log in as one ID on one device, and then another ID on another device, and then another device, and you can have 3 tables or 6 if you're doing Teams in each of those devices, but they are all separate. That, if you've got the ability to do that, that may be a good thing, and you'll feel like mission control looking at all your devices. But whatever works within your comfort zone and your students' ability, and you are then just restricted by the number of browsers you can use on each device and the number of devices you have. But you can play with this on your own. Don't play with this to start with your students. Set up your own IDs. Practice with the devices that you have, opening up browsers. You can set up a teaching table populated with just yourself or people that aren't online, and just see if it works and practice before you go into a live session. So really, in a nutshell, that is how you do it. I think it's worth mentioning something else at this stage, and that is that there is a collaboration at the moment that's gone on between BBO and the English Bridge Union that is allowing all clubs around the country to open up virtual clubs. Previously, the only way that you can run a tournament yourself on Bridgebase Online is if you had host status and you can give people director status. These are gold dust, these host licenses, because everyone suddenly wants them and BBO have stopped giving them out. So there's a restriction. Now that restriction, we've found a way around it, that clubs can sign up and they can run paid tournaments. So all of your local clubs will suddenly have the ability to run their own sessions. Now that's important to us as teachers, because that means that if we want to run supervised play and much bigger sessions, all of our clubs will have the ability to help us to do that if we just communicate with them. So it's a very good idea to be collaborating and speaking to other teachers that are around you that may want to come in if you've got a bigger group and help you with it. it's worth mentioning, if there are two of you that have the ability to set up tables, you can divide the work. You can have somebody set up a teaching table, you can set up another, and you can share. That makes it easier. Or you can speak to your local club and say, are you opening up a virtual club? Could you run a supervised play session for me? It's very easy for them to do that. You can upload your own deals and you can be in there kibitzing and teaching at the same time. Find out what's available to you locally, and then speak to your county association and find out if that's something that they're involved in. So collaboration here, I think, is a really important issue and something I want to raise in order for you to explore. So I just want to mention before I leave and hand it back to Lorna and questions, and I'm sure you have a lot, that next week we haven't really explored other playing sites, and of course there is Bridge Club Live, which is another large website for play, and Bridge Club Live is renowned, for those that know it, it's renowned for its ethical policy and its behavioural policy. So if you've got students that are moving on to supervised play and moving on to playing on their own, Bridge Club Live is possibly a gentler place for them to start. So next week we're going to be looking at their coaching corner and all of the options available as a teacher within their site. And so to give you the heads up, you can log on and you can have a look. And if you have any questions or want to join in next week, then please let us know. So for now, I think I'm going to go back to Lorna. And she is going to see if anyone's got any questions.
Right, hi everybody. Right, now I've certainly noticed quite a few questions coming in the chat box. So I'm going to go sort of down them in order. I was wondering, let's see, can we see Francis Gareth? I just need to unmute Francis. I don't know whether you can help with that. Steve, can you see Francis? Francis Gareth?
I've unmuted myself. Good morning.
Okay. I noticed your question about the 100 logins. Can you just ask us what you were asking about? Sorry, can you just tell us what your question was about the 100 logins?
It wasn't a question. I was pointing out that you need that, and if you haven't got them, you can just log in and out 75 times in 5 minutes.
Oh, right. Yes.
You must have that.
Okay, so
I mentioned that, yeah, we covered that, we did cover that last week, and I mentioned it again. It's very true. It's very true, Francis, and it's a really good point. And there is another point with Teams, that even with 100 logins, you can only set up one team. So if you press that create team button and you need to go back and recreate it, that's your one chance gone. So be very careful and very assured that all of your settings are as you want them before you create that team, because you won't get the opportunity with even with 100 logins to do another one. You'll get a note saying you've exceeded your team limit today. So just be careful when you're setting it up.
Can I just jump in there? Sorry, this is Tony Storr. Just to let you know, I fell foul of that problem of creating multiple team games, but there is a director tab, and you can go to that and you can delete the team game that's in progress and then you can start another one without any delay.
Right, okay, thank you for that, Tony. Thank you for sharing your expertise with us on that. Brilliant. Can I just
very quickly, sorry, you do get people declining the invitation, and you just have to stay calm and go on hitting create team match until they've all accepted.
Okay, excellent. Mike Eden, if I can just get you to share your question with us. You want to know about breakout rooms.
Yes.
Can't hear you very well.
Sorry, Tim Chanter sent me an answer. Can you put both rooms, and can you get them together back in Zoom, or do they have to always be in the two breakout rooms?
No, you have complete flexibility there, Mike. It does take a little while. You'll see it working before it moves people into different rooms. You have the flexibility to start by allocating your rooms. So if you know that what tables you're setting up on BBO and what rooms you want people to go in to talk to them because you know the tables, you can actually initiate Zoom to put them straight into those breakout rooms. You can bring them back into the main room at any time. You have complete flexibility. My experience with my students, though, for the first time is they do again get this invite. They have to accept. I'm sure you can disable it, but I haven't done that yet. They have to accept on their Zoom link the move to the breakout room unless you put them in there at the very beginning. And what happens when they're playing is because they've got their they're playing on one screen and they've got their link to Zoom minimized, they might not see that invitation. I had 4 tables last night and I had some people that saw it and moved, and others that were playing on iPads, they had their BBO screen up and their Zoom, they didn't see the invite to move into a breakout room. And so I had to, chat on BBO and say, look, there's an invitation, you need to go back. So explain, I think small steps really. I think do a classroom, get them used to breakout rooms without BBO, just deliver a lesson, get them used to moving from one to the other. What happens? You can put them in, you can bring them back, you can change who goes into different rooms, you have absolute control. But get them used to that first and then introduce play and then put it together. Last night I taught transfers and I gave a lesson and I made a mistake of actually then trying to put everybody in and sort it out. What I should have done was say, okay, take a 10-minute break here. We've had our lesson, go and have a cup of coffee, go and have a break, and I'll sort out the setup on BBO and I'll put you into rooms and come back. But they kind of wait around, but you have absolute flexibility. You can put them anywhere, you can bring them back, you can change rooms, everything.
Okay, next question. I just want to acknowledge this question, but it may not be relevant to what we're doing today. But Chris Morgan has asked about, has anybody taught mini bridge online yet?
Yes.
So Chris, I think that I would probably share Jax's answer here, that obviously BBO doesn't handle mini bridge. I would, if I can make a suggestion, that if you post something on our teachers forum, then anybody who's had experience with mini bridge might contribute to that conversation.
Can I jump in here, Lorna? Mike has, and so could you let him speak?
Yeah, sorry, which Mike?
Mike Eden.
Oh, okay. I think Mike is unmuted. If you could.
You hear me?
Yes.
Yeah.
I did try it. It's not wonderfully successful, but if you, when you're teaching it, say that a part score is 1 club, 1 diamond, 1 heart, 1 spade, and a game is 3 no trumps, 4 hearts, 4 spades, 5 clubs, 5 diamonds, then the only bid made by the declarer is one of those 8 bids.
Okay, Mike.
Okay.
Thank you.
That's worth a try. Okay. Right, now we've got a question about browsers. If I can just find John Erdos and make sure that John is unmuted. Let me see.
Hello there, yes, can you hear me?
Oh yes, John, what was your question?
I was just wondering whether you can, if you're going to have multiple logins, whether you can't just have different tabs on your same browser.
No, if you're logged in under one browser with that username, then that's all you can do. You have to have a different browser. So you are limited to the number of browsers you can open on that device. I had 3. I've got Windows 10. I had 3 last night. I had 3 browsers open on one device and I had 4 tables. I have one Teams table and 2 teaching tables individually. So you're limited to the number of browsers on each device and the number of devices you have. This is something you can experiment with. You don't need your students to open up a teaching table and see if it works. Just open up as many browsers as you have, go in there, create your logins, open up a practice table, and just see how it works. You don't need to have a student to practice that.
Right.
But you can only up one ID per browser.
Okay.
Okay. I just want to mention that in the chat stream, we had a comment from Dave E. Tarski with a whole list of other browsers. So if you find yourself with time on your hands and you want to install lots of browsers onto your computer, I think he's put a massive list there. So
can I just say, actually,
yeah,
can I just say Adam Weisberg has also commented on that. You can just use Google Chrome, and by pressing Control-Shift and then you can have multiple incognito browsers apparently. So you could actually run the whole thing through Google Chrome. I haven't tried it yet, but obviously Adam has.
okay.
I
so
haven't tried that.
Can
Can you say that again?
incognito.
Yeah.
Incognito browsers.
Can you put Adam on? Adam.
Let me just find Adam.
Adam Weisberg. You don't mind talking, Adam? Yeah.
Where is Adam? Where is Adam on my screen?
Hi,
Unmute Adam. Oh, okay. Yeah.
I've done it. Okay. So in Google Chrome, and I think it's the same in a number of other browsers, you can open a new incognito tab.
Ah.
And when you open new incognito tab, it's effectively the same as having multiple browsers open, and you can log in on Google Chrome with as many BBO logins as you want, as long as you open a new incognito tab for each one.
Okay, that's fantastic. I think what's absolutely fantastic about this is that you're not just asking questions, you're giving us answers, which is brilliant. Absolutely fantastic. Right.
Sorry, it's an incognito window.
Okay. Thank you for that. Thank you very much.
Okay.
Right, Jean Benson, your question about kibitzers and player swapping tables. Jean, where are you? Jean, can we see you?
I'm here.
Okay. Jean, you had a question about kibitzers and players swapping places.
That's it, yes.
So just how to.
That's right.
Yeah.
Switch them over.
Yeah. Jax, did you cover that in the presentation, I think?
I did last week, is
Oh,
where you need to look. If you, no, don't worry, no apologies at all. It's good because I'm sure, you know, this all brings up questions. We're all new to it. If you click on, I can demonstrate it if you like. If you click on the seat, you get a list dropping down and it says sit, remove, clear. It gives you all the options, or reserve, and you click the reserve again. And that you then can put in a new user and it replaces the one that is on there. So click on the actual seat itself and it will give you a list of everything you can do. It'll also list robot on there, but unless you've paid, you can't use a robot to replace a table. But then you can pull people in and out. Doesn't matter whether they're kibitzing or not. If they're not, they will get sent an invite out. If they're just kibitzing in your room and one of your students leaves a seat, you can leave a seat of your own volition. You can just press and then it'll ask you if you want to leave your seat. You say yes. Then if that seat becomes available, it just says sit, it's just clear. Then anyone can just click on it and sit on it themselves. So there are many ways, but have a look.
Right. Okay, so another question we had was from Christina Ballinger, about how do we arrange people into different breakout rooms?
Yeah, I wasn't going to go through this purposefully, as Steve said at the beginning, and I said there's a really brilliant tutorial on breakout rooms that I can't better, and I certainly don't have, you know, not within the time frame that we have. I would go onto their website and look at their own tutorial. It's very informative. The reasons we told you, I told Steve to show you where the settings were, because that isn't obvious. Where Steve started this tutorial, it doesn't say that when you look at the breakout rooms video in Zoom. You need to change your settings to enable them, and that's not clear. But the rest of it is fairly self-explanatory, and I actually used it. I've been using it the last couple of weeks, and it's very clear actually. So go on to their website, look at their own tutorial, and play with it and have fun with it. You know, actually, my students, they all laughed and enjoyed. You know, we're all on a journey. They're just so grateful to be able to communicate and to be able to be at the teaching table again. And we're all learning. And I think if everybody brings to the table the idea that this is new for most of us, and we're bringing our best sense of humor and sense of fun to the table, then my experience is everybody is just so grateful just to be able to carry on, that they're patient.
Yeah. Absolutely. Right, and I think we'll just take our last question now, probably, because we've had about an hour. Mike Willoughby, I think you mentioned you've asked something about a post-match review. So can we see Mike somewhere? Let me.
Yeah. Hi. Hi, Lorna.
Okay.
Yeah. If I set up Teams table and I want to do a post-match review of what's gone on, can I do that in the two rooms, or do I do best to bring them into one common room and look at the history?
You can either, if you go back on the demonstration, when you're actually in, you know, when you're in the table, you just click on, you click on the tab, the scoring tab, and you can get the history up, and then you can talk to them if you wish. I think it's better to have a look at the history yourself, go in the history tab. It will be saved because it's a Teams match. You can spend time yourself going through the deals, bring everyone back into one room, and then make comments, or individually write to them afterwards and send them, you know, tips on individual card play. I mean, this is a great benefit. There are some assets to online play, in that when you have more than one table, you have the ability to see what everybody played and bid. Now, this is not really, we're not able to do this as we teach in big rooms when there's just one of us. So it's an asset. My advice really, Mike, would be to go in the history tab, go over it, spend time, and then you can even start your next lesson by a debrief, or send them individual constructive feedback if you so wish.
Yeah, I've been doing that offline, but it's much better if you can do it online, because then you can go card by card through it in both. You
can. And the other thing you can do, Mike, is if you want to just use a constructive lesson that way, you know that in history you can, when we looked last week, if you go into history and then click on the blue hamburger of that deal that you bring up, you can then reload it back onto the table.
Yeah, sure. Yeah.
So you can do that within a live setting. You can get the history, you can get the hand that was played, you can export it, but you can reload to the table, and then you can show them how they played and discuss it over the top. That's a really good
and
way
I can
to do it.
show how it was played in both rooms, can't I?
You can.
Yeah, which is what's interesting. So you've got comparative there.
Yeah, exactly, because you've got an other tables tab. I don't know if I made that clear when I was in the Teams room. For everyone that's looking, while I was looking at the board, I clicked on the actual previous board and the deal, that particular board. If then a little blue tab above says other tables, if you clicked on that, you'll see exactly what the other table did, exactly on the same board. And as you quite rightly say, Mike, you have a direct comparison of what's gone on.
So it's exactly when I'm reviewing my own mistakes when I played a match. Great, thanks, Jax.
Sadly, it's all there in glorious Technicolor for everyone to see.
I know, it's horrible, isn't it?
Okay.
Thank you very much.
Okay. I mean, we've got loads and loads more questions coming in the chat, but I think we probably need to sort of wind up now, unless anybody has a really burning question. Let's see. When is there's one about, does anyone know when the EBU will launch these virtual clubs?
Yes, it's being launched. I can answer that now. It's launched now. I am running one on Thursday evening. It's out there now. So my tip is very much this could really make a massive difference to your teaching. Speak to your county association and speak to your local club and ask them if they are running their own clubs again and what opportunities are there for them to offer supervised play or teaching sessions, because if they run their own session, you can do however many boards and whatever deal files you like in whatever setting. It's so much flexibility. So collaborate, speak to your local clubs, speak to your county, speak to your local teachers and see what's available. You could get together and run sessions, and it's by far and away the easiest way to deal with a lot of tables and uploading your own deal files that you wish.
Can I
Right.
just ask a question?
Okay, one last question. Okay, this is our last question. Sorry,
I run a number
Diana.
of clubs. Yeah, I run a number of clubs that are no fear clubs. They're not associated with the EBU, although I'm a teacher for the EBU.
Okay, so non-affiliated, that's super.
That's non-affiliated, yes, sorry, that's the word. Is it possible for me to run clubs non-affiliated, or do you have to be affiliated?
You at the moment have to be affiliated. Yes, you do. That's not to stop any of your if any of your members that are not members of EBU, they can join and play at any of these other clubs. But at the moment, it is for just for affiliated clubs.
Okay, thank you.
Right. Okay, so let's wrap up there. Now we've had some absolutely fantastic questions. I think Steve is just sharing our last slide by the look of it, which is in the PowerPoint view by the look of it. So I have mentioned at the beginning of this tutorial that we have a teachers forum on our eBed website. The address is there, ebedcio.org.uk forum, and you can join the forum. You just create a username and a password, and on that forum you can add questions about any. You can start a new topic or join a topic that's already there. And the benefit of that is that if you ask a question on the forum, we can answer you, and we're actually effectively answering then a question to hundreds of people rather than just one individual. So we'd really appreciate you doing that. And also just to say that we'll see you in a week's time for our next tutorial, which, as Jack's mentioned, we will talk a little bit more next time about Bridge Club Live. So I'd like to thank everybody for taking part today, and Steve for working behind the scenes, and especially to Jax for another fantastic information and teaching that she's done for you all today for using Bridgebase Online for Teams. And good luck with your team, the teams that you're going to be setting up, and let us know how you get on. Okay, so goodbye everybody.
Bye. Thank you.
Okay, bye.